All right, Charlotte. Thanks for meeting me, not really in person, but as good as we can get for now. You've kind of been like circling my social media circle for a while, and then I've always been like, I want to have a conversation with this person, so we made it happen. Thank you for
Yeah,
so
it's
how do you
great to be here with you, Jesse. Yeah.
yeah, thank you very much. I don't even know how to pronounce your last name, so can you start off with that with the full name?
Yeah, Eléa. It's not the last name I was born with, Eléa.
hmm I'm sure
It
there's
is
an
now my
interesting
legal last name, but it was not the last name I was born with.
right on. Is there like an interesting story there, or maybe I'll get into that later?
Um, Gosh, I don't know how to summarize it, but essentially the last name I was born with was not a lineage I wanted to follow spiritually,
Yeah.
and I adopted a last name that was gifted to me from spirit that is still unfolding. It's a sound. It's more like a sound than a name. And it continues to inform me of what it means every day. So,
Well,
yeah.
it's a beautiful sounding name. So I'm really into language and I'm really into like just the feeling of like the music of like the sounds of words. Like I was really like a Tolkien nerd when I was growing up. So
Yeah.
he was always into just like he's like I'm gonna make a language that's just based on what I want to hear. So saying names like Galadriel and stuff like he just made that up because he's like it just sounds cool. I guess I gotta have a story behind this.
Yeah.
So Eléa gives me that kind of a feeling where you're just like, I don't know what this means, but it really rolls off the tongue nicely. And
Yeah. And L itself, the prefix L has deep mythical, religious, spiritual foundations. I mean, if you look the name of any archangel, right? How does it end? L, Raphael,
yeah,
Michael.
yeah, absolutely. God
So
created.
that in itself, you can go down a long rabbit hole just with what L has meant it through, yeah, because it's sounds that we make through our mouth have a vibration, and that vibration is connected to some sort of frequency. And this is how language used to be created. And so, yeah, the little ways we can bring that back are great.
Yeah, I can get deep really fast here, which is just that there's almost no more magical thing than language itself. It like I joke with people and then I go like I love playing with language. Like people just say I make dad jokes all the time, but I'm like, I don't know, I just love puns. I love double meanings and metaphors and it's like half the reason why like I do the work that I do is because it's just like weaving a web of language.
Yeah.
And that even when I'll get excited, I'll be like a spell. I'm like you spell letters and you cast a spell. It's all there.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the little pieces I had in a previous life, as we've talked about, I trained as a psychotherapist, a psychodynamic psychotherapist. Um, and so I actually in the school I went to, we studied Freud extensively.
hmm
Um, but one of the there are a few gold nuggets that I've carried through about on Freudian psychology, and one of them is Freudian slips. And I
Yeah.
still track
Yeah.
people's Freudian slips, which means like they accidentally like slip a word of truth in, like where oh, I didn't mean to say that. It's like, oh, but did you? Yeah,
Right, because there's a difference between just like stumbling over your words and because it's a Freudian slip, it's almost always, it's not just like someone said, instead of hand me the glass of water, they just go, hand me the glass of cheese. They never do that. It's always something that happens to be like, you go, I see the meaning though. There's clearly you're revealing something.
yeah,
And it's a thing that I always say that people's subconscious mind is leaking. Like
yeah,
they try to hold it so that like there's stuff wanting to come out. So like let's say
yeah.
you're pretending to be a certain way, but deep in your subconscious, there's something else going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
It'll
No, it
fly
often
right through.
happens like in a very emotional moment. And it's like a way of your like soul, like bringing in a little levity for you. Like, don't stop taking yourself so seriously. The truth wants to come out. Look at it and laugh at it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will often like mess up a word and then I just try to immediately own it because I'm just like I could either just try to like overcorrect and then be the embarrassed guy and I'll be like, no, I'll do a thing now where I go, I'm making up new words. Shakespeare
Yeah.
did it. I can do it today. There's always a day for new words.
Yes, I love making up new words. I do that all the time too, Jesse. Like I'll just like I'll say, "Is that a word?" You know what? It's a word. It's gonna be a word. Like why not? Why not evolve our language?
Yeah, I know. I have times too where I've been such like a an avid like reader of literature since I was a kid that I really liked. I was like, oh, I love grammar and these are the rules of grammar. And then I'll watch society start to make like the same grammatical mistake over and over again. And then I'm learning to let go because I go, at one point in the year 500, people had the rules of grammar too, and they're not going to stay the same. They're going to morph and evolve over
Oh yeah.
time and just let it go. Like maybe those were the rules, but maybe this way is doing it better. Like people
Yeah.
will misspell, like they always say, I want to be a part of this, but they make a part one word, and I'm like, no, it's a part. And then I've just accepted, I'm like, you know what? Probably if we say it enough times, it's just gonna dominate, and then
Yeah.
the votes will win, and maybe that's a faster way to type it out. Maybe it's better.
Yeah.
So
Was
Eléa,
one of your parents an English teacher?
no, I
Oh,
don't know
okay. I'm
where
just
I.
curious because I was very English teacher. One of my mom was actually an English teacher, but I actually have the opposite reaction where I don't correct people's grammar because I grew up with a mom correcting my grammar.
You're like, oh, wait, I know how that feels. I know the sting of the
Yeah.
you got it. That's a past participle or however you say. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You're like, no, people say I've swam or whatever, and you go, no, I have swum, and swim, swam, swum. Remember all those things drilled into my mind when I was a kid. So, Eléa, I'm still stuck on that one now. I'm liking that. I feel like that's the thread we're gonna follow of
Yeah.
finding out a little bit more about you. So, other than your love of words and the sounds of words and wanting to find a new identity, are there any other ways that you changed yourself other than changing your name? Found a
Oh my
new.
gosh. How many ways can I count?
Yeah, what comes to your mind
Yeah, I
first?
mean, I'm one of those people where it's like I feel like I've already lived like, you know, 20 or 30 lives. So, as I meant to, and I think as many of us are meant to right now because we're evolving so quickly, you know. But yeah, I'm like, where do I start with that one? Speaking of the rabbit hole. Speaking of the rabbit hole.
Oh yeah, the whole. Okay. So, well, maybe just start telling me about, what you currently do on a daily basis, occupationally or for fun or whatever you do, and then we'll kind of work backwards how you got there. Maybe that'd be a good way to get about it.
Okay. So what I do, I like to say like what I do is not just what I do, but it's who I am, right?
Yes.
Because I began a process of leaving the sort of traditional work world of career about uh, about 10 years ago, but maybe a little bit more than 10 years ago, maybe about 12 years ago. And I started out in my early 20s as a psychotherapist or social worker actually, and then psychotherapist. I wanted to be of service, but I burned myself out really quickly because I was really in this place of ignoring myself. And so then I flipped the switch and I went to a place where I was just exploring myself and worked it in marketing, and I had a lot of different types of jobs and like writing, marketing, web building, all that kind of stuff. But I became so divorced from who I was. Like I basically went into a uh, a spiritual crisis, because I was just in such deep denial of my nature. And then I bottomed out with all of that and quit my jobs, the jobs that I had had. I quit a series of jobs. You know, it sometimes takes a little while, right?
Hmm.
And I started to study tarot and the esoteric things, mystical things, subjects, and that's where I started to really find myself. And I became a spiritual entrepreneur and was able to integrate my depth oriented psychology background now with the esoteric pieces, with tarot, with archetypes, all of that. And I really loved it. But then my spiritual journey just started taking me deeper and deeper into the divine feminine. And I began initiating as a priestess. And this was around just as the pandemic was starting in 2020. And I then got so deeply pulled into shadow work that I pulled out of my business entirely,
Hmm.
my spiritual
Yeah.
business. And so that was, yeah, the last few years. And it's only been the last 2 years that I've really started coming back out and being of service again to the world with this just very expanded perspective on what it really means to be of service, how to be of service in the world, that in a way that's not transactional but is relationship building and community building, and how to um, build prosperity for myself, for my family, for others, and also a very different paradigm that is not based in sort of like this job, this career, but is based in basically just who I am. And yeah, and that led to the initiating the opening of the Goddess Temple in Morro Bay on the Central Coast, and forming it as a nonprofit and as a place to build prosperity, community prosperity together. So yeah, it's been a really incredible journey. um, and so yeah, when people ask me sort of like, "Oh, what do you do?" I say, "Well, I'm a priestess." And people say,
Yeah.
"Oh, well, that's what's that?"
Hmm.
And because it's a word that I know a lot of people. It's a word that's becoming more, I should say, like trendy, right?
Yeah.
But for me, it's not a title that I take lightly because it's something that I have been spiritually initiated into and taking on that word, and also that I've like taken actual vows of 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 being in service. So to me, to be a priestess is to devote myself in service of the goddess and the divine feminine, devote my life in service of that.
Yes.
It's a devotional path. Yeah. So it is who I am as much as what I
Yeah.
do.
Like I'm getting the feeling that you just decided to do this in a purely like personal spiritual way, and then maybe after a while you decided it's okay to kind of like almost like come out, and then this can be part of my public persona as well, despite how people might misinterpret it. And it like you're just like I just don't even care anymore because it's like you're carrying that fire alive within you. And I can imagine that you were like, let's say you lived alone in the wilderness in like a mountaintop in Turkey, Syria. I don't know, I'm imagining some old like desert monk that you would have done this anyway. That it wouldn't have anything to do with like this is a name I want to make for myself or an image.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? This is just something that internally you already did. Maybe during that period you were saying of like shadow work where you just going like I'm going through this inner transformation, and then it's almost like you went into a cave and you did all this work, and then you kind of like you came out and you're like, okay, I'm rested. I
Yeah.
hibernated. I
There's
have the
definitely
strength.
like, I mean, there's definitely this huge hermit part of me. It's actually in my human design. Um, I could be content. A lot of me could be content just staying as a hermit for sure. Like I love spending time with myself alone, reading mythology, interpreting my dreams, looking at the world, and like creating all my own little ideas about everything that's happening. Healing my own, doing deep alchemical healing within myself, just being in my own little cave. Yeah, like I love it. And what pulled me out was the drive to be of service. Like that whatever has happened in me, the world needs this. The world needs to I need to give back, all that I have received. And yeah, it's definitely like calling myself a priestess is I call that it's something I call that I use that for myself. And so yeah, like you said, it's really doesn't matter to me anymore whether people understand it, it's more the resonance when people ask me what I do, I say I'm a priestess. And then when I say that, I can feel in alignment and in integrity with truly who I am versus putting on a role that is that is digestible, understandable to the
Hmm.
larger culture. And in that and in that in itself, it sometimes challenges people. And I've had to just have to accept that, It's not that I want to challenge people. It's just that
They just have to deal with
it
it,
inherently challenges people.
All right, so I thought I would just bring this up because I'm like, hey, you know what? It came to my head.
Hmm.
You could almost, I'm like, how do I frame this question? I'm thinking priestess and witch,
Hmm.
and they're probably like there's a Venn diagram there. You know what I mean?
There's totally a Venn
Some
diagram,
overlap
yeah.
because I'm like, I like the gracefulness of the sound of the word priestess, and it has, speaking of archetypes, it is a slightly different kind of a feel, different kind of an archetype, even though it's along the same lines too. And there's ways that you could compare and contrast those two terms, those two roles in society, because you could, I'm sure you've researched as much, like, what do we know about priestesses of ancient times? What do we know
Yeah.
about witches? And I just thought maybe you could kind of like rant from there about like your thoughts on that.
I know that is such a deep topic. Yeah, and I think that that's a conversation. What is a priestess versus what is who is a priestess versus who is a witch that never ends, right? It's
Yeah.
one of those almost unsolvable. It's like a question without. It's a question that begs more questions, And so it's a great question.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
it totally is a Venn diagram. And just, but as you were saying that, I'm like, one of the ways we can perceive it at is that where does the priestess live? She lives in the temple. Where does a witch live? She lives in a house.
Okay.
And for some reason, and it's again, yeah, it does come down to resonance because I love the word witch. I will use the word witch, especially when I need to reclaim it for other people,
Yeah.
when people are saying something negative about the word, I'll be like, well, I'm a witch. For the sake of womankind, I will reclaim that word and use it when necessary, you know?
Hmm.
And I love all the witches in my life, and I love witchcraft and Wicca, and I know a lot about those subjects because all of my own spirituality and magic is earth based. And yet, for some reason, priestess just lights me up,
Yeah.
and in a way that witch does not.
Hmm.
And part of it for me, as you were talking, is because the priestess lives in the temple. That is her domain. Priestess needs a temple.
Interesting. So yeah, I'm feeling it. So and like I feel it's I feel the resonance too. I don't know how or why, but I'm like I like that too. There's this I don't know more like I imagine someone almost like in like closer to the royal court. You know what I mean? Like the Merlin type would be more of almost like he's the wizard clearly. But maybe like the priestess is slightly aligned more with that archetype of someone who's maybe because I'm imagining like the temple being I'm like well, let's examine like what's the difference between the temple and the home. Everyone's got a home. The homes are everywhere. There's tons of homes, right? But then maybe like each town only has one temple, and it's the place where everyone comes and gathers together. So maybe it has
Yeah.
something to do with the gathering together. I'm not sure, just kind of wanting to meditate on this idea of the temple.
Yeah, I think there is something around that of it's where all the pieces come together. It's the center. It's like the center of the community. And this, I think, has deep threads of remembrance for me because there was a time before patriarchy when the priestess temples were the center of towns, were the centers of communities, where all the resources were held, where everything was allocated equally among the whole community, right? Um, and I think there is like some kind of remembrance of that to me, of community leadership through equity, through um, yeah, through a word I like to use around how I organize systems is in the temple that we're building right now is heterarchy. So heterarchy versus hierarchy. Hierarchy is, as you know, like shaped like a triangle, a pyramid,
Mhm.
where power is concentrated at the top and resources are concentrated at the top, and everyone's trying to get to the top.
Yeah.
Heterarchy is built like a circle where there is a center of the circle, like kind of like a queen bee in the center of the hive who holds the consciousness. And everyone else comes in and are fellow circles within that circle. And they bring their own form of leadership and they lead in their own domain. And
Yes.
so all and they all contribute to the whole through leading in their own way, through bringing their own unique gifts, their unique medicines, but they
Absolutely.
share something in common. They share a consciousness that is held by somebody in the center.
That's, what's funny? That makes you think of the round table. Like the knights of the round table, right? Because I mean, I don't even remember the lore because it's been so long. That has something to do with King Arthur being like,
Yeah,
I'm not at the head of the table. We're a brotherhood that's there's an equality here, and I think that's like really cool how like old that symbol is. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Going back in a time that's very hierarchical to have that ancient symbol of the circle thrown in there. It makes
Yeah,
me
well, I
wonder.
mean, yeah, look, I mean, this could also like bring us into the topic of like mythology because the Arthurian romances, which I have studied quite a bit because they carry a lot of symbolism. And it's like they're written in yeah, deeply patriarchal medieval time in human history, but they carry these mythic archetypes that were very ancient and that come from the older pagan cultures. And
So
so
do you
there's a
think
lot
that,
that's encoded in those stories that you
yeah.
kind of have to pick apart and find, and then you can track it back to older stories. So there's a lot of really amazing authors that do that actually.
Yeah, oh my God, we should explore that. Because I feel like you're already going to finish my sentence, but I'm thinking that the Arthurian mythology is something that uses all the trappings of Christianity, but it's literally something, a way to like secretly give people divine feminine teachings underneath it in the
Yeah,
symbol.
but you have to sort, but yes, and also you have to take all the stories of the women in those myths like with a grain of salt because a lot of the women in those stories are really like demonized, you know.
Okay, yeah, like Morgana Le Fay and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, like she both saves Arthur's life and like destroys his kingdom. Like what's up with that, you know? Like she's someone who's been greatly misunderstood. And
Yes.
like Nimue, you know, who she like was Merlin's um like she was Merlin's student and mentee and was meant to take his teachings and further them, but then like she kills him. You know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, maybe
There's
you're
this
cool with
so
that.
there's this very tortured kind of relationship with the men who are writing about the feminine. They're like we love them but we fear them too. We fear their power.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe it's not in the literal women, but that's what almost I was saying is it's almost like so hidden, so
Yeah.
esoteric. Because what I want
Yeah.
to jump into is like how if you're cool with it, is like how the Holy Grail itself looks to me like that's like the goddess.
Yeah.
Like the Grail is just the most feminine symbol
Yeah, it
you could
is the
have.
feminine. It's the feminine that oof, this is one of my favorite actually pieces of this mythology because it goes back to yeah, it is the thing that we lost through patriarchy that men have been trying to seek and reclaim, but have been doing so in an unconscious way without realizing what they've lost, you know?
Yeah.
So there is this incredible story that comes from this time, like from the time of the Grail romances. I mean, there are Arthurian romances and the stories of the Grail, and it was actually a preface to it was an unpublished preface called The Elucidation, written by I forgot his name, and it told the story of the well maidens and how there was a time when the well maidens were these women of fairy kind that stewarded all the healing springs and wells all over the land, and travelers would come through and receive healing and nourishment and bathe in these springs, and the well maidens would tend to them unconditionally. It was just this gift, right, of the earth. And then at one time, a king came and raped one of the well maidens and stole her food, stole her chalice, you know.
Yes.
Um, and that set this trend where all these kings then started raping the well maidens. And so what happened was all the well maidens returned to the earth. They went underground. They said, no more. You're not going to have any more of our healing. We've been abused. We've been raped. We've been traumatized. And after that, the land died. So all the like, you know, the meadows, the forests, the grove, the apple grove, you know, the groves of trees, they all dried and died. And there's this sort of like deadening that happened to the land because the goddess was was um, was oppressed and went and hid, right? So the Grail like receded. And then this it was an introduction to one of the Arthurian books because it was Arthur and his knights who then were going on a quest to retrieve the Grail to return the life and abundance to the land, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, there's like so much that you could unpack there. But
Yeah,
what
it's
it does
such a
is,
metaphor. I mean, it's just such a metaphor for our world, you know, of how thirsty we are for the feminine.
yeah. And I think it's interesting. So I'm like, you did start off with this psychodynamics background, which I'm sure has never left you, and you probably in some way like paved the way for you to be where you are right now.
For sure. Yeah.
And that's kind of almost how I got started. Like my path was the same thing. Is I really, really love the idea that, and I even feel now that I had an intuition about the world, but back then I was just so analytical. I didn't know like you can feel things without knowing why you feel them. But that like underneath society, I could just feel that there's just like a huge level of just like hidden psychological forces.
Mm.
And I was just like, people think they go about the world and live their daily lives, but I was just like, the reason why we do things, we don't even understand. It's just like like speaking of a well, just like a well of forces and
Yeah.
emotions and archetypes, and however you want to describe like underneath, out like above us all, in a different dimension. But I could just feel it sometimes, or I like feel like a either like a darkness or something that would be like underneath things.
Yeah.
Then if you use the idea of a well just being like eventually wants to come out, and then you can try to suppress something from wanting to come out for a while. Just like when we were always saying people's subconscious mind kind of leaks.
Yeah.
I wonder if that happens like on a collective level. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
present another one of these big loaded like questions for you to like meditate on, which is if we have suppressed the divine feminine, let's say, I don't know, like let's say I'll just make up a number, like 2,000 years, maybe we've suppressed the divine feminine. It wants to pop out all the time, and it does in little ways. And you know what I mean? Because it can't be fully suppressed. So I wonder if we're in a time now where it's just wanting to come roaring back, and if it'll,
Yeah,
because
and
the
it
world
is.
wants to
It does.
rebalance.
And the thing is, it roars back at first in very unpleasant quote unquote ways, right? Through feminine anger and rage. And this is why it's really important for women to reclaim their anger and rage because like there's a lot of deep healing that needs to happen from the level of shame that women have carried that has kept it, all that energy down. Grief. Women need to really, really grieve what we've lost. So yeah, anger, grief, rage, sadness, it comes up. I see it so often manifest through physical illness as well, and um, through through the womb.
Yes.
So, and this gets into intergenerational ancestral trauma, right? That's finally surfacing within women to heal. And so endometriosis is like so common these days. And this didn't used to be common at all. Like, why are so many women suffering from endometriosis? Because their wombs are finally waking up to the trauma that they have been carrying for so many generations among their mother's lineage, and it's finally surfacing to heal. And when it surfaces to heal, it surfaces as horrible, horrible pain. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like it's even though it looks bad on the surface, it's almost like something coming to a head, coming to a crisis moment,
Yes,
saying,
exactly.
"Hey," it's like screaming without words, but it's
Yes,
like,
like, hey, pay attention to me. You have the capacity now to hold my pain, to process this, to alchemize this. The women before you did not. Now you do. So yeah, it is. It's horribly painful, but in some way, it is that crisis moment of changing, of transformation. That the pain is now ready to be transformed. If it wasn't, it wouldn't surface.
interesting. Wow. So, and this makes me think of really something that I'm like personally really interested in is just the idea of all the implications of like what you're talking about, like something that's an intergenerational issue. Because you go, let's say that there's all these bad things that like they are in the past, like this big line that stretches out behind you in the past, let's say. You could say it passed because it's over, but in some sense it's almost like it's still tied to you. But I'm really exploring this idea of like you can't take away what happened, but you can heal it in some way. I'm
Hmm.
really interested in the idea that you can somehow heal the past. I don't know if there's a way to
Yeah.
do that or
I
deeper
could, I
connection
know
to
there's a
it.
lot of things I could say about this. Yeah, so this gets into one of my favorite topics. I'm going to bring in a word of multidimensionality, right? And so, one of my biggest spiritual awakenings is recognizing that I get to be multidimensional. I don't have to exist in just one timeline, one space. And that is one of the medicines I carry is being able to travel through dimensions, lead other people through dimensions, through shamanic journey. And what we experience in the past will always be there within that one timeline, right? But the first thing we do is to um, open to that experience in all ways to love, right? So, because so many times we have traumas or wounds or pains in our past that in some way we're blocking ourselves from. We've put in a little compartment within ourselves, but haven't let it be part of who we are, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the first piece is that we just allow this to be part of who we are with all the love that we have within ourselves. Like it belongs, right? All their traumas, pains, wounds, it belongs within us. That's part one. But the other piece, and this is when we get really, really deep into like cool, like shamanic healing, is that we get to also recognize that there are other timelines, parallel lives. And so even though we can't change what happened in that one timeline, we can also integrate lives from parallel timelines. And so, say, for example, let me see if I can come up with an example for this in my own life. I'm like, what's an example that's not going to be super too personal to say on a podcast?
Yeah. You could do what I do where I just talk about, I'm like, oh, a friend of mine or a client I had once had this issue and and I go, that's not me at all.
um,
And you could talk about in the abstract, not like a specific thing, but like in general, things that people deal with that they can use a parallel. I'm still trying to figure out what you mean by the parallel thing. That's
yeah,
amazing.
like so for example, okay, so say you were in your early adolescence, and so early adolescence is such a pivotal time for especially women when they go through menarche, right?
Hmm.
It's a little later in adolescence for men because you all go through puberty a little bit later.
Right.
But for girls who go through who go through their menarche around like 12, 13, 11, 12, 13 years old, that's a pivotal time, right? And rites of passage like that bring you into a very vulnerable place because you're literally existing between timelines as you make these rites of passage. And so you're very open to good things and bad things, like influences. And so for women who think back and maybe they had like, I don't know, a very negative experience with their first bleed, maybe they were shamed, maybe they were told, like in other cultures, like women still have to like stay separate from their families, be sequestered to a room. Maybe they were made to hide it. Maybe they had really embarrassing things happen at school. Maybe they're just really confused. Maybe they thought they were dirty, right?
Yes.
Which just kind of sets you on a path of learning that womanhood is dirty. Your blood is dirty. It's wrong. It's evil, rather than it's powerful. It's blessed. It heals, right? So so if there's one timeline where you experience that as incredibly traumatic, there could be a timeline that you connect to from a parallel life, right? So you existing in a parallel dimension. So your soul, living a life with but maybe with a different set of parents or in a different town, like it could be because there's limitless parallel dimensions,
Yes.
limitless, right? It's like it's not just like, oh yeah, how many other dimensions are there? Oh, three or four. No, it's limitless. And so sometimes another dimension is just a few factors change, right? And so pulling over into a parallel dimension where a few factors were different, where you then had a really positive menarch, and maybe you had the whole community gave you, or your family, like gave you a celebration, and your mom gave you a gift basket and like gave you some nice teas and showed you how to use the pads and all of that, where you felt welcomed into womanhood in a really
Yeah.
positive way, right? And so you can through shamanic journey or through astral travel, you can pull in these parallel life experiences and
Yeah.
overlap them. And so then you can have both. I know it's
Yeah.
like kind of sounds like to some people crazy. It's like, oh, that's just your imagination. It's
No,
like
I mean, it's clearly
it's
like,
more than imagination. It's actually it's actually owning how multidimensional we are. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I just love this too because it's almost like a more colorful way, even than the way I talk about it in the work I do, where I do like timeline therapy, or I'm just intuitively doing this without explaining it in this really fun sci-fi way that we're talking about now, even though that's literally what's happening. So the way I could almost like reword it, I love that you said pulling in because that's the whole time I was just imagining. I was like, it's almost like you can like draw it in and pull it in. So I was thinking it's interesting because you go, okay, if we're spiritual beings, we're incarnated now in this life that I have now. I'm in this body in this place. So that kind of limits me in one sense. So it's like you could say that's like a timeline that's sort of locked in because you know how matter is more. like
Yes.
solid, you know what I mean? But then I like this idea where it's like, even though I am somewhat limited to this, you're saying there's infinite possibilities, infinite versions of me, and that since we exist on different levels, I can say I can't necessarily like right now, make that book fly off the shelf. I'm not that good at magic yet, because it's on the material level.
Right, because it's on a
But
material level, right?
I can pull in from a different level, a different version of me that has a different emotional experience,
Yeah.
and the spiritual dimension can communicate back and forth.
Yeah, because it's consciousness, right? Because
Yeah.
it's like your your all your memories you have in your past is just one form of consciousness. Um, and your soul is is in this consciousness that you're having, but your soul is also in a limitless array of consciousnesses. And so your soul gets to go out and create sometimes even, oh, I'm going to create another timeline because beyond our physical bodies, our souls are so vast and powerful. Yeah, they are. We are limited when it comes to when they're dialoguing with this physical reality. It's much more limited. But beyond this physical reality, it's limitless. It's infinite. And
Yeah.
so our souls can be like, I'm going to cast a light down that valley, and then I'm going to reel that in and bring it back into this body. And it's like, and we also, I mean, it's like we know from psychology how memories, dreams, fantasies all reside within the same part of the brain, right?
Mhm.
The brain has an inability to distinguish between a memory, a dream, or a fantasy.
Yeah.
And so if our souls do that work for us, bringing something else in, our brain is going to be like, okay, yeah, yeah, that happened.
Right. This makes me want to start talking about dreams now since you brought up dreams, because I've explored this a little bit. I had a little while where I did a dream journal, then kind of stopped for a while because I feel like I only have so much time in my day, and then I'll switch from one practice to another. And I'm like, hey, Jesse, you got to be consistent. At this point, sometimes I go, you did a year doing one thing, tried it out. You did another year
Yeah.
doing another practice. And then I can kind of like build and figure out I'm really into. But I really liked that when I started dream journaling and doing this thing where like I got this book called, I think it was called Active Imagination or something, talking about how you can incorporate your dream life into like a meditation practice
Ooh, cool.
where you kind of like recollect the dream and then you start to expand on it. So in other words, you like tell the story of your dream, but then let's say a symbol comes up, you start to meditate on that one little thing that seems to be meaningless, right? It's like, oh, it doesn't matter. I don't know. There's like a teddy bear in a dream. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a stupid teddy bear. I don't know why it was there. Let's just disregard that. Instead of disregarding it, you go, what is every single word that comes up when I think of teddy bear? And what are all the
Yeah.
associations? And then you start playing off the associations, and then it becomes this endless thing. Like, how people like they go into the Bible and they look at one like verse and they just like
Yeah.
they talk about it for like a whole day. You do that with your dreams
Yeah.
because it can be infinitely unpacked.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you have to say about that, but I was like, dreams definitely are in my mind one of these dimensions that we're tapping
Yeah.
into every
It
night.
is. Yeah. I love that practice. I'll have to get the name of that book from you because that's very similar to I think my daily practice. Almost daily, I should say. I feel like I remember my dreams and I write them down about 5 days a week. There's a couple nights a week sometimes where I'll either wake up in too much of a rush and I won't remember them, or or they just won't stick, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Hey, you need a
but
weekend every once in a while. Take some time off from.
I know, but I love it. It's like it's my morning spiritual practice. Is I
Yeah.
have my cacao and I get my dream journal out and I draw my tarot cards and I do what you said. I write the dream out like it's a story and I let go of what I can't remember because I trust that what I remember is what I meant to remember. And then as I write, yeah, associations, connections just start coming, because it's still morning, you're still in that non-linear, dreamy mind space. And yeah, it's really interesting. I'll sometimes laugh out loud, like as I write, because these like it's like my guides and my highest self offer putting these little like breadcrumbs for me in my dreams because I'll write something in a certain way and then I'll read it as I'm writing it and I can see it's a direct message
Yes.
that like when we wake up in the morning we're like ah no that dream that was just weird that didn't mean anything but then when we start writing it and we go into that place of just non-linear thinking it's so rich, you know, like that thing we thought was just silly is actually this like you said, like a treasure trove of like a breadcrumb that leads to something that leads to something. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's funny you're
and
saying that because the same exact thing is what I was describing. Is that I
yeah,
go,
yeah,
as I'm writing the dream down, there's this thing that happens where like when the dream is still kind of hovering in between my subconscious and conscious, like there's just that I love that space where you're kind of like it just feels so meaningful, so amazing. And then as I go to write it down, it I always feel this like embarrassment, like this is really dumb. I only have one sentence, and then I'll be like, no, write everything you can remember. And I'll be like, I don't know, I feel like I dreamed for like 8 hours the whole night, and then I'll have that feeling as well where I'm like, you're never gonna get it back. The more you struggle to try and get the memory back, the more you're just in this
yeah,
cycle of just like trying to cling to it. Trust that this stupid little fragment of a dream, and I know that there was other parts to this bigger thing
yeah.
that I'm like, this is all you have is the
This
crumb.
is all
You
you
don't have the
have.
whole loaf of
Exactly.
bread. But then what happens is I will even be typing something out and think, okay, this doesn't matter. And for some reason, as I type it out, it becomes the most obvious cliche advice from the world to me of what I'm supposed to do. Like as it's like
Yeah.
coming out of my mouth or as I'm like typing it out, it just becomes the most clear symbol instead of like some mystery, like, oh, what this could this possibly mean? It's just like the most anyway, you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, yeah, no, I know. I have two things to say about that because, yeah, sometimes just a little. I know I get that too. I'm so frustrated. There's all this part of the dream I didn't remember, but then in that one piece, even a detail like I turned left, right? It's like where if there's a hallway and there's like, why did I go left and not right? You know, or there's like something on this side of me, or the room was loud, or the room was dim, or that person was wearing white. You know, like those little details are often like really big, and sometimes it's just one vision, one scene that like you get all that you need to from that. So there's that and yeah and I think both Jesse you and I like since we both have consciousnesses that are really like in that mythic realm we see how like our dreams are feeding us our own personal mythology basically you know it's like collective mythology comes into it as well and the collective mythology connects to the personal mythology but it's really like since we both have like an easy way of like grasping into that world that when we write our dreams it's like of course you know because like we understand things in the mythic language right which to me the mythic language is just the language of the soul yeah
Yes. Yes. And it could be that, like you're saying, we're well versed or we're avid readers of the language of the soul. It doesn't mean we're well versed because I'm
yeah
always like, I've
yeah
got more,
avid
I just got
readers
a much
exactly
more.
I like that avid honest yeah avid readers of of mythology yeah
But then, yeah, and just like when it comes to, someone who's never had wine before and they just go, I think this is made from grapes. I don't get it. I don't get the subtleties. Is that the more you get into these things, you become more aware. It's all about, concentrating your awareness.
Yeah, and in seeing
And
the patterns, you know, like the more, like we were talking about before, like the more mythology you read, the more you see the patterns between one culture's mythology and the next, the more you see the patterns between one story and the other, you know, and that's the same thing when we track our dreams. You start to see the patterns between one dream and then the other dream, or this dream and mythology, you know, it's like you just start to track the patterns and that's where you really come to the journey of the soul, and the language of the soul. It's all about discovering those patterns and the sacred patterns. Yeah.
Wouldn't you say that I find it interesting that I believe that there's a collective consciousness that has its own shared symbolism, which that's what we see it like in all of these folklores and mythologies. But then what I find really weird about dreams is that it seems to be a completely unique symbolism
Hmm.
that isn't necessarily shared. So maybe you will have archetypes in your dreams that you go, okay, these ones you'll notice repeat over all these different people. And I think then that's what makes it an image from the collective unconscious. But then, like I was saying, like a teddy bear could have nothing to do with like a bear archetype in like, you know what I mean?
Right.
It could mean that it was just something that meant something to that specific person.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe the bear represented like a relative of theirs.
Yeah.
Or, you know what I mean? It could have a million different variations. So
Yeah.
dreams seem to be weird how it's like a personal mythology.
Yeah. I think it's a combination because the more I track my dreams, there are a lot of there is a lot of collective archetypal imagery and messages that come through, and it's sometimes it's just more coded, right? But but I think it's a combination because I think that yeah, we do have our own personal mythology as well, like just deeply held associations where it's like our guides or our highest self put that teddy bear in that dream because they knew that we would feel the resonance of that from something from our childhood, right?
Hmm.
Um, like who gifted it to us, or what did it remind us of, or what time of our life does it take us to? So I think it's a combination. The more I explore my dreams, and the more I explore um, folklore and really like the really ancient folklore too, not just the like we talked about that what has been written down and praised by our patriarchal cultures, but fairy tales, right? Fairy tales are like a gold mine of
Yeah.
divine feminine wisdom because these are the stories that were passed down word of mouth from woman to woman. um, and stories that have been lost and are being rediscovered within our collective. So so yeah, I don't know if we can like I don't know if the symbols of like Greek mythology show up in my dreams, but the symbols of like Snow White and um, what's another very like deeply divine feminine story Rumpelstiltskin, like those types of ancient stories, definitely show up in my dreams.
Oh yeah. Was Rumpelstiltskin the one that has a guy working on a machine when he's like spinning? Or
Yeah, so he's the one that there a woman is trapped in a tower,
okay.
and he she gives him her gold, and then he what happens? She has to procure this gold for the king in order to be set free. And Rumpelstiltskin spins, which is divine feminine, this
Yes.
it's very feminine
Yeah, yeah,
symbol,
absolutely.
straw into gold for her with the promise that she will give him her firstborn child. Yeah.
Oh my God.
But
Yeah, and then
then but then the way that she breaks that spell is by learning his name and saying it 3 times. So there's deep symbolism in that of learning the
yeah.
name, the real name. Oh my gosh, we're going back to language, right?
No,
Circling
exactly.
back around.
So yeah, I could go to there, or there's like a other direction I could go, which is maybe that's for a later time. Is I've been reading this guy and he's talking about the magic. I don't even know what he means yet, but I have to figure it out. The magic of finding the true name of things in the world.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yep.
and I'm like, something is pulling me into wanting to learn that. But I was just going, like, look how fast people who think like us like come up with associations. The second you talk about spinning being a feminine symbol, I think about, I don't even remember the name, but like Odysseus when he's off, his wife, I believe, is weaving something
Hmm.
or making something like that. So there's this constant association through the ages of weaving with
Yeah,
women for some
yeah.
reason.
The divine feminine weaves the world together. The weaving goddess. She is one of the most ancient archetypes, actually. She
Then
who
there's the
Spider
spider.
Woman,
Yes.
yeah, Aryan Rod, like she who weaves the world together. Yeah, and that goes back to the multidimensionality, right? Weaving all the worlds, all the dimensions together. Yeah.
Then you could go on from there and talk about like why the spider, I wonder if it's like not even like on a literal level is like can be terrifying. The dark feminine, the dark mother,
Hmm.
but it
Hmm.
not being
She who
like
consumes, yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
But then the dark mother not even being something that's like evil, it's just the like other side of the polarity of
Yes.
femininity.
Yes. It's yes, exactly. If you want her creative power, you need to have her dark power as well, because that's what keeps it in balance, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
The light mother creates, brings everything to growth. The dark mother consumes, brings everything back into nothing. That's how we remain, keep balance. That's how everything is beautiful. Otherwise, you would be like, Earth would just be in one of those overgrown wild, unruly, I mean, it is, right? Garden with no, that there's just too much of everything and fruit rotting on the ground. Yeah, everything dying because
Yeah.
there's nothing is in balance. Yeah,
Forests need to have an occasional wildfire to purge everything and start anew.
yeah,
Then everything's covered in these dark ashes and it seems like desolate for a really long time.
yeah.
And then I don't know if you've even been in like a place where that was recently like a burned down forest. But what happens is so much mineral content is deposited when the bad thing happened of the wildfire is that then it just causes this like crazy bloom of flowers like you've never
Oh,
seen before right after. You know what I mean? There's almost like too much because you're just like, whoa, whoa, there's the soil is so fresh now when
oh,
all the
wow.
trees decomposed.
Yeah.
That's me getting overexcited and saying more
Yeah, no, I
symbolism.
have read a little bit about that, and there's certain species that come in right away that will regenerate the soil, but they're fast growing, fast dying, and then the ones that come in that are slower and then slower and slower. Yeah. But the other piece you were talking about that like of knowing the true name of somebody
Yeah.
that has like deep esoteric meaning actually that we can actually put into actualization in our life when it comes to especially shadow work of knowing the true name of your demon, of your shadow, of your adversary, whatever you think is your adversary, right? Whatever you think you're fighting against, to understand its true identity by saying its name, thus reclaiming its power within yourself. So, yeah, there's so many folklore stories, mythology that have that. Um, it's a lot of the older stuff. Yeah, I love those stories because they're deeply enriching. That's the only word I can think of to describe it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're kind of coming to the close of this hilariously unending conversation with infinite.
Non-linear here and there,
I love
yeah.
it.
If you
Is there
ever want to get
anything?
together and geek out about folklore and mythology, I am here. I love it. It's like my human intellectual side just loves this stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, I have a human side too, pretty intellectual. Anything that you didn't mention that you would like to add in here before we go, like stuff that you do, something that's really important to you that you wanted to bring up that we skipped over?
Um,
We talked about, priestess, goddess
yeah,
temple.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I want everyone to come check out Goddess Temple Central Coast in Morro Bay. We're just getting started. We've only been operating a couple months, but we have so much in store, and just I think a pledge for everyone out there just to hold deep compassion for themselves and for everyone around them right now as we're going through this grand awakening and grand crisis through awakening
Hmm.
of the shadow. Um, I just been asking myself every day, how can I anchor more into compassion? How can I hold everyone's experience as sacred? And really, like, how can we all learn to listen to one another more deeply from from their experience versus our own, you know?
Hey, that's a beautiful way to end it. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
You're making me think of another one. It's just, which is the idea of going through labor. Like the world is going through labor pains. I've heard a lot of people say that kind of a thing of if you were to
Yeah.
stumble upon seeing a woman in labor, you'd be like, "What horrible thing is occurring right now?" When little do you know that it's actually that experience that's causing new life to be born, something wonderful to come
Yeah,
about in the middle of the
exactly.
crisis.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I think there's a lot of the shadow of the spiritual world is spiritual bypassing, right? It's the inability to hold the dark, and people who are going through the dark, people who are confronting the shadow and are willing to do so within themselves as well, right? And that often doesn't look pretty. It's meeting those places within yourself that want to just rage out, that want to go into a deep dark hole of despair. And so we need to hold space with love and compassion for everybody who's going through that, because holding space for them means that they will transmute and transform that energy and that they will be architects for the new world. Yeah.
Right on. All right. Well, I just want to say thanks for doing this. I knew that we'd get along and be able to talk about whatever forever. And I really support the work that you're doing. It was cool to, I always love seeing someone start something new. It's just like what makes me like, I don't know, inspired myself is just to see other people succeed. And I'd love to see you succeed even more. And anyone who's watching this, go learn more. Go if this sparks
Yeah, yeah, and
interest.
it's not for me, for our community and
Yeah.
for yourself, Yeah.
Yeah, help the community by helping out Goddess Temple.
Yeah.
All right, maybe we'll do this again because we clearly have more to talk about. And
Yeah, I know, and you feel free to edit this edit away.
no, I think it's perfect as it is. Okay, I'm gonna
Okay,
go
all
here.
right. All right, thank you, Jess.